So look, I'm in Austin, Texas today. So very excited to be joined by one of the original sponsors for the podcast as well. So thank you for welcoming me into your house. We're doing our first outdoor shoot as well. So it's a bit of a challenge with the lighting, but we sorted it all out. So maybe just to start off with, just to introduce yourself and talk about how we actually met and sort of how we got to where we are today.
Amazing. Well, one, thank you for braving the Texas heat. It's summertime here, so I appreciate it. How we met, I like to think of you as an internet friend. We're thousands of miles apart, got introduced by a mutual friend and had a few late night for me, early morning for you conversations about the rental industry. And we were at the time just getting Boom and Bucket off the ground, and you were a great resource for how we should think about this space.
Yeah.
And then we've kept the dialogue going. And then when sponsorship opportunities came for the podcast, we were happy to support that. Some of our earliest customers are large rental companies, and so we view it as a constituency in the group that we want to get closer with, and we want to support as much as possible. Kind of final thing that I'd say is that there's been this amazing renaissance in terms of the professional groups and podcasts and content coming out in these spaces that it's pushing the industry forward in a way that I don't think existed a few years ago. And so to be associated with that, it's a great joy for us as a company and exactly kind of what we're looking for from a brand perspective.
Yeah, over the next few years, there's going to be more podcasts coming out for sure, because it's such an easy way to get a direct voice towards the people that you want to communicate with. Like I was at United Rentals the other day, and they just launched their internal podcast. Yeah. So they're doing one every month, and they're covering certain things, but more and more companies are going to start looking at that internal podcast, and even more are going to focus on creating external podcasts where you talk to your customers.
Yep.
You were talking about doing a success case study.
Yeah.
That could easily be turned into a podcast.
Totally.
So that sort of stuff is why we started it, just to share stories. And by the way, I've got to say, when I created your ad on our space and we put it through on the audio, I reckon I had maybe 5 people reach out to me and said that the Boom and Bucket name was like really good.
We had a laundry list of names, and there were some good ones on there and some less than good ones. And my co-founder Samir just loved the alliteration of Boom and Bucket, as did I. And so when we got to the bottom of that list and saw Boom and Bucket, it was just one of those things.
It just rolls off your tongue, but it's just it's just there. Boom and Bucket sounds good.
And it's different. Everybody else is heavy. It's metal. It's iron. And certainly, we work in that space, but we want to be slightly different. Just like the brand, like it's red, white, and blue. That's not a mistake. A, we're based in Texas. We're based in the heart of the United States. But B, every website has a lot of yellow on it in this space.
That's true, isn't it?
Yeah. Stand out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. It was quite funny, but talking about yellow, I was up in Fort Worth, and I was talking to one of the marketing people, and I was talking about Caterpillar, and they were asking, which one's Caterpillar? And I said, just think of anything yellow, basically, is Caterpillar. And they're like, isn't Caterpillar owned by Bobcat? Isn't that the same thing? And I was like, oh my God, the branding, that would kill someone at Caterpillar to hear that.
It would. But, John Deere machines are not green in construction, right? They're a derivative of yellow. And so I love it when I see fleets that paint their machines. There's something cool about having a black machine or a blue machine or a purple machine, just something outside of that traditional yellow that stands out.
Yeah, we had someone on the podcast recently, actually, and they've got like a limey color for their machines.
The Sunbelt.
Yeah, no, this is in Australia.
Cool.
Yeah, but then we drive down the highway, and they do rollers mostly, and Sunbelt's in that same category as well. It's very easy to identify the machines.
Yeah.
Rather than just getting, like when you buy it from J&G and you get an orange machine, it's just orange.
Yep.
Or when you buy Genie, it's just blue. So mixing it up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some room to be creative and fun on that side in this space, and so we're excited to try to do some of that.
Yeah. So maybe Adam, do you want to just talk about how you first got involved in the equipment rental industry, and maybe pre the industry as well, sort of how we got in this space?
Yeah. I feel like my story is probably a little bit different than a lot of the stories that you hear in this space. And so my background is much more kind of technology based. I grew up in the Bay Area and then Spokane, Washington. That's the farming part of Washington State. It's all wheat fields, winter and summer wheat. And then I went back to the Bay Area for an undergraduate degree. And I just got very, very lucky that I met my first boss. And this guy named Joe Lonsdale started this company called Palantir. Palantir is famous for being the software backbone for the CIA and the FBI and all these intelligence organizations, and it was wildly successful. Joe was leaving and starting a new company, and he hired me to be the first employee. And so
Wow.
I got to follow somebody who had built a $1 billion business as a 22-year-old, and I followed him around for 4 years. And so I learned kind of the ins and outs of what it takes to hire, to fire, to goal, to motivate, to build, to deploy technology. And so we built that team. Eventually, we were doing tens of millions of dollars a year in revenue. Built a team of 125 there. Raised a lot of money, and it was a lot of money then, and still is a lot of money, and that was 10 years ago. And then when I was ready to leave, he supported me in my next thing. And so I built a phone-based tools for hiring for small, medium-sized businesses. And so in 2014, the thesis was that most people weren't using computers to find hourly wage jobs. Why? Because computers are $2,000 at the time, but they definitely are using their smartphone, and they're using their Android or their Apple device. And so we built a bunch of tools that would allow you to apply for a job via text message and be evaluated for a job via text message, and then book interviews via text message.
Okay.
We sold that business in 2016. A lot of fun. Our biggest customers were like nationwide restaurant chains. And so, we'd go in and we'd sit down and we'd eat with the store manager and just eat more junk food than you can imagine. And just a great learning opportunity because I did it for myself then. And then after selling it, ended up at a company called Bolt, B-O-L-T. It's a payments company that helped e-commerce merchants and their customers check out online, accept payments online. So we do the credit card processing. And then for those merchants, we offered a zero fraud guarantee. And so thousands of merchants signed up, millions of user accounts signed up. I was chief operating officer of that company. That company, in my time there, we raised $200 million, and subsequently they've raised $750 million more dollars.
Wow.
And it has this chance of kind of being the next PayPal if everything works right. And I say everything works right because it's still a technology company that's growing, and PayPal is an amazing company that they've built over 25 years. And so, those are my backgrounds and experience. And if you tie the string together, it's that I've loved starting things in markets that already had incumbent players, but customers were not totally happy. And so I left Bolt ready to go back to do it again. And early in that process of kind of figuring out what it was that I wanted to do again, I met one of my two co-founders, Samir. Samir Shah grew up in Toronto, Canada. His dad is in the trades. He's a structural steel subcontractor, so they do the metal work for big buildings. And the first piece of software Samir built in high school was inventory tracking system for his dad's steel inventory. And so this man has been building construction technology for 20 plus years. Construction technology kind of wasn't even a category 20 years ago, And so, it's one of those serendipitous things that I have this experience in taking things 0 to 1. And he knows this space really well. And so between those two things, we started working together. And the other kind of really important thing about Samir's background is that he had built software for the rental management industry, a company called Yard Club. And that company had been acquired by Caterpillar back in, I believe, 2017. And then from 2017 through midway 2020, Samir ran Cat Digital Labs, the innovation department of Caterpillar.
Wow.
So if you use the Cat app, that was his little baby. If you use the modules on there to understand machine usage via telematics, his baby. Some maintenance modules, some preventative maintenance modules. Like, he was deep in the data side of that business for a long time and really pushing it forward on the innovation side. And so Samir and I got along incredibly well. Added a third co-founder in the mix, one of his former colleagues, Aaron Klein, who was also at Yard Club. So he led the go-to-market motion and deployed all the Cat dealerships. And so, again, knows the space really well. And the three of us started working, and we said, this space is interesting. And in particular, the resale of used equipment's really interesting, because the biggest company is a 60-year-old auction house who is famous in our market for flying people up to their fishing lodge and earning business that way. And if that doesn't scream an opportunity, I don't know what does. And so we kicked off this process where we talked to dozens and dozens of people on the buy side and the sell side of heavy equipment. We took a class to become used equipment brokers, not because we didn't know how to sell stuff, but because we want to learn the ins and outs of it. We joined the Association of Equipment Management Professionals. we talked to anybody that would talk to us who started a company in this space. So we talked to families, first generation, second generation, running equipment shops. We talked to people that were doing display and advertising websites for heavy equipment. We talked to folks in the rental space, and we just built this model and came up with this idea that kind of fundamentally the way that heavy equipment is bought and sold should look a lot more like Carvana or Carvac or any of these kind of online services where you know exactly what you're getting and the service is outstanding. And so that's what we set out to build. And kind of we think of this as you buy from Boom and Bucket, and 99% of the time it's exactly as described. It comes a little bit early in terms of when it's been delivered, and you're happy. And so that's what we've been building over the past year, and we've sold hundreds of these machines now. On the supply side, we work with large construction fleets and rental companies. We work with folks who care deeply about the quality of their supply and have technical infrastructure to support things like preventative maintenance programs. And then on the demand side, we typically help regional and smaller construction companies, both subs and GCs, buy equipment to do necessary jobs. And what we found is that people love the experience so far. 92% of machines that we've sold are sight unseen, so they buy online and they ship it through our platform hundreds of miles away, and then they come back. And so we've had a bunch of customers, even over the course of our first 6 months, come back to buy more because it's a trusted experience. So it's that's a little bit of the background, a little bit where we're going today. Happy to kind of dive in, dig in on it.
What's Yard Club? It'd be interesting to touch on that.
Yeah. So Yard Club, if you think back in the early 2000s, Uber for X was a concept that everybody was trying to do, and it was everything from Uber for moving companies to Uber for food. And the model for those things are kind of asset light rental companies. And Uber's an asset-light taxi company in the sense they don't own the cars. And so Yard Club was, if you were a fleet and you had machines that you're underutilizing, so maybe you weren't going to utilize some of them on the next 4 months, you could put them in a rental pool and rent them out.
Okay.
And so different companies have since tackled this in different ways, but the sense is that machines are not utilized 100%. And for many of those customers, if you look at their balance sheet, plants and equipment is the biggest part of the balance sheet. And so why not utilize those machines? And who has a lot of machines sitting there? In most times, and I say most times because we're in a weird supply and demand environment right now, dealers have a lot of excess inventory that on average takes somewhere close to 180 days to sell. And so why not put some of that used stuff in a rental pool, hence Caterpillar dealers being their biggest customer base and the Cat acquiring the company.
Interesting, yeah. I think that even works on like construction sites. I've seen people talk about having like almost a shared economy on construction sites where you can use telematics to control who has access to machines and stuff like that. Like that's definitely like something that I can see the construction side moving towards. Like we know that on this particular job site we've got 3 30-ton excavators and we've got 5 different contractors. They can log in and then be charged when they use the machine.
That's smart. Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, that's a little bit like what Equipment Share does in terms of their T3 system that you just log in the machine. It's keyless, and so that's how you would engage it. But if you could deploy that technology to a broader fleet, that's an amazing kind of idea. That it's just that these machines are so expensive, and well-run companies have high utilization rates, but it's really hard to get high utilization rates.
Yeah. So you've been involved in so many startups, even just at a very young age.
Yeah.
Like, what's it like when you said you started at 22, employee number 2, did you say, or number 1?
I accepted my offer as number 1, and when I got there was 3 people ahead of me because I had to graduate college.
Like, what's it like being like that early on in a company? It must be like a lot of chaos, like a lot of fast moving things. Like talk me through that experience.
It is, so I've been exposed to this a lot with myself, and I've have a lot of friends that have started things as well. And the successful ones in their first 2 years, it looks like you're sprinting. And you're sprinting for a few different reasons. One, if you stop, you die. Just nobody cares. You don't have enough customers that'll even care if you just disappeared in your first year of being a company. And so it's all about adding momentum and beating inertia in the business. And the kind of great companies end up having a vision of what they need to accomplish. And that vision is not 6 months from now, it's what are we working towards in this industry that's informed by making our customers successful. And so if you have that vision, and you have folks that know how to sprint, and what I mean by sprinting, I mean hard work, you end up making yourself successful. And that's what I think people look at and they say, oh, startup success is luck. Some of it is certainly luck, but I guarantee that the luck is manufactured by hard work. And so those early days, I think back fondly on them, particularly before I had, a lot of responsibilities outside of work. But, it was 10 of us in a crappy office, crap furniture from IKEA, working to make customers happy. And every successful place that I've been, it's been working to make customers happy and doing whatever it took to get in the room with those customers and understanding their problems deeply, and then figuring out how to come back as fast as possible with a solution to those things. And so it's fun. It's teamwork. It's everybody rowing in the same direction. It's no egos because, at the end of the day, like, it's been usually me taking out the trash for the team, or ordering food, or all the little things that just you end up being, focused around this one goal. It's a lot like team sports in that regard.
And then obviously recruiting and trying to build teams is a big component of startups as well. So when you want to start growing and bring in the right people on, how do you sort of manage that side?
Yeah. Every company has, a different philosophy around hiring, and there's not one that always works for everybody. The early Adipar team, so that was my first company that I was at, of the first 20 employees, subsequently, they've started $2 billion companies. One went public at a $10 billion valuation. The other one sold to a large insurance company at a $2.5 billion valuation. The quality bar in terms of what we looked for was exceptional. And the only way you hire people that are exceptional is that you put in the work in the hiring process. And so what that means is that you as a founder, or you as a founding team, or you as leaders sit down and you say, what do we value in our employee base? And so we have a set of values for boomies, for example. That's what we call boom and bucket employees. And we rigorously evaluate against that. So that's step one. Step two is that we run a process called who. Who in the sense of who are we looking for type thing. And we spend an inordinate amount of time up front defining the thing that that person will do. And we do that because we want to find the best person for that job. And what that means is that we think about, if we get the best person, what does their scorecard look like in terms of their performance plan or their grading system at the first 6 months in their first year. And then we find the person that will get 100% or all A's or 5s out of 5s in that scorecard. And then we do everything possible to hire them. And what that means is that on the phone screen and the first steps of the interview process, you end up talking to a very wide funnel, and you put in the work. Like my partner Elisa will tell you that oftentimes, particularly in the early stages of company building, my weekends are talking to candidates. And it's because there's no shortcut to finding good people. And if you're looking for good talent, the difference between good and great in terms of work output is wide, but the difference in terms of the evaluation criteria is small.
Yeah.
And so it's about uncovering those little things. My favorite little thing is pretty simple. I like somebody that has a little bit of sparkle. And it's one of those things. It's that you meet somebody who's intellectually curious, who went the extra mile for a customer, who on a Friday night responded to the email. And it's just that little bit of something that when you're building a business that's customer obsessed, that little tiny bit at the end is the part that ends up mattering. And so like I look for those signals of like kind of that extra effort type stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like, I like how you said like customer obsessed, because you almost need someone that when something goes wrong, like you're embarrassed. You're embarrassed and you take it to heart. Yeah. It's not just like, oh, well, yep, the delivery was late. Well, I guess we'll get it right next time. It's like, oh, let's break this apart. Yeah. Why was it late? Yeah. Let's explain this internally and make sure it never happens again.
That's that knot in your stomach when something doesn't go right. And it's a personal affront because you knew that you could make it right, and now you got to figure out how it never happens again. And so you're absolutely right. Like we run this process, it's a 5 why root cause analysis, which is Why did this thing fail? Okay, why you said, oh, we didn't have the customer sign the paperwork. Why didn't we have the customer sign the paperwork? Oh, it wasn't built in the checkout flow. Why wasn't it built in the checkout flow? Because we didn't think about it. Why didn't we think about it? Because we didn't spec appropriately.
Sure.
Now we spec appropriately. We're 5 questions away from that kind of small little failure, and then you never have to deal with the problem again.
Yeah, I feel like so many times you get swept under the rug and it just happens over and over and over again. And they're the companies that really struggle with like true customer experience.
Yes. Yeah. Because customers notice that shit. Customers notice if you mess up the same thing twice. And I guarantee a competitor doesn't mess up the same thing twice.
Yeah, it's almost, even like if machine breaks down,
Yeah.
it's like you want even the service techs to be uber passionate to get that machine up and running as fast as possible, or to organize and say, look, I can't fix this in 2 hours or 30 minutes. We need to get a replacement machine out as fast as possible. And then the person that is working with that team gets the next machine ready, and it's all about a team effort as well. So
Totally.
you can't have an individual contributor solving all the problems. It's everyone sort of working in harmony.
Exactly. And then when we think about the great companies in our spaces, we think about that as a mesh of people working together to provide customer service. You certainly might have your account manager, but they have their drivers, they have their service techs, they have their call centers, they have everybody behind them that delivers this exceptional experience. And so, like, I read a lot about United Rentals in the early days, and kind of 2 key things that they highlight as success for that company. 1, a strong IT backbone, so software, and 2, great compensation philosophies for their teams. But the first one, the IT system, allows everybody to get on the same page about how they're servicing the customer.
Yeah, well, everything's paper-based, or it's on whiteboards, or it's in someone's head or a spreadsheet, or it's in multiple systems. You can almost make up the results.
Yes.
And next minute, you've got someone that's trying to not fudge the numbers, but paint their own narrative rather than having an analytical response to say, these are the KPIs and metrics that are actually happening right now.
I mean, the rental industry is at a really interesting place because you have somebody like Equipment Share in the U.S. who their core thesis was building the technology backbone and then building a business around that. And it'll be interesting to see how that develops over a few years because there's no hiding from data. The machine works or it doesn't. Maintenance was done or it wasn't done. It was on time or it wasn't. And so, if that kind of theory plays out, 10 years from now, they should be one of the best in the space. I don't know if they will be, and I don't know the team well enough to, kind of comment, but they're really taking that approach where there's no wiggle room because the data is something. The data says, what the data says.
Yeah. And so being involved in so many startups, like burnout must be a factor as well. If you are customer obsessed, when you go home, you're constantly thinking about like what the next thing is that you're working on.
Yeah.
Have you seen burnout happen a lot within companies? How have you managed burnout personally? Like, can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, personally, in the past 10 years, I've been 20 pounds heavier and 20 pounds lighter. Neither one was healthy, and they were unhealthy for various reasons, and this is almost all stress, which is burnout. In 2016, I was selling my first company, and I got shingles. Shingles is a chicken pox, but it usually happens when you're 60 or 70 years old.
Oh my God. My
doctor said it's stress related. And, I had hives for weeks, all because of the stress. At Bolt, my last company, I got mono during a relatively intense fundraising time, and I had 2 things I could do in my life. I could work intensely for a small period of time and sleep. And, these are the things that, it's hard. And that burnout is all because the balance is wrong in my life at the time. And so, athletes do this. They push themselves incredibly hard. I think people that are driven do that as well. And you can do that, and you can do that for a fixed period of time, but nobody can sprint through a marathon. And so I think about it that way now, that if you're going to sprint through a marathon, it better be a relay race. You better not be the only runner. And so I go through intense periods of time now in my work life, and then I pull back. And, on average, the tempo is higher than normal, and I probably am more productive, but I have to have that balance. Otherwise, I end up in those positions that I talked about. And so the early signs of burnout for me are that I stop exercising because I think I need that time for other stuff. I stop preparing food for myself and I start getting takeout again because I want that time to do other things. And then a few weeks later, I find that I'm lethargic. I'm a little crankier. Some breakouts or a little acne or something like that. And then I just realized, oh shit, didn't take care of myself for a few weeks. And so there's no hard and fast rule about how to handle burnout besides as you get older, you get better at managing yourself. And you better be good at it by the time you're committing to big things.
Because, if you're building up a company, any company, and you're not managing that at burnout, you're thinking you're trying to do the right thing, and then you might be out of work for a month.
Totally.
And then that can completely ruin the company.
Yep.
Those little things can really make a big difference.
Well, and I mean, leadership is 90% showing up. It's how your team sees you engaged. It's, do I respond to emails quickly? Do they see me following up with customers quickly? Do they see me giving a damn when something breaks? And so if there's times in my life where, I'm on one spectrum of the kind of hard work sprinting to hard side, it usually means that some of those things that I'm responsible for internally are going to slip. And the kind of secret now versus 5 years ago in terms of my maturity or in terms of our maturity is I communicate that. I just tell the team, like, I am doing this thing and I'm intensely focused on it, and these are the things that are going to slip. I need to shift these areas of responsibility so they don't slip. And that's it takes a little while to learn how to do that because you want to be responsible for all the things that you've owned. If you're the CEO and you're in charge of hiring, firing, fundraising, strategy, goals, metrics, it's a big laundry list. And then at the end of the day, you got your personal relationships, your wife, your partner, your kids, your pets, your body. You can't do it all. And so, communicate about what you're not going to be doing and be very clear about it.
And then when you do have all those things and you're a senior leader, like time management becomes really, really important, I'm assuming, in this spectrum. Like I always think about someone like Elon Musk. It's like, where does he get the time in the day to work on so many projects? And it's because he needs to delegate and trust and all that sort of stuff. Like, so how do you manage that time side of things?
Elon's got Gwynne Shotwell. She runs SpaceX. It's a $125 billion business, and she's built it, and it's amazing. And Elon is a central nexus for a business like that. And then, we've seen some of these leaked emails. I need you to deal with this. Fix it in this way. And he delegates, and that's it. And, the sooner that you learn to trust your team, the sooner you're in a better spot. And when I say you, I mean all of you in that company. That if you keep and hold on to those things for too long, your team's going to resent you, and quality is going to suffer. And so the kind of goal in terms of pushing that to people is to give them enough rope to hang themselves, but not the company. And I guarantee if you have hired good people, they'll thrive in that environment. They want to be on the threshold of what's hard for them. So give them a little bit more. Ask for a little bit more. And people rise to the occasion.
And then, when they get the sense of them achieving something, that turns them into wanting to do more as well.
Totally.
Like if you take the fire from someone and then and then you tell them how to do it, like you're just a puppet then.
Yes. Yep. And man, watching somebody achieve something that they thought was too hard initially, achieve it and be ready to level up quickly, that's how you take someone who's good and they become absolutely great. And you change the trajectory of their career. That's how you take a salesperson, you give them more responsibility, and suddenly they're a nationwide account manager because you gave them a little bit more and they crush it. But incrementalism in terms of management responsibility or in terms of additional responsibility is a key on that one.
Yeah, and I think even like when I look at myself, like I remember when I was working at an ERP provider, the CEO at the time basically asked me, I want you to demo to this large company. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know all the functions. Yeah. And he was like, you'll figure it out. Yeah. And it's like just those little things that he sort of threw over the fence and said, like, you're probably going to stuff it up. Yeah. But it's all right. Yep. Like, stuff it up, learn from it, and grow from there. Like, those mistakes are what really make people better. And like you've made plenty of mistakes along the way.
A lot, yes. Yeah. I'm not offended by you saying that. And you don't even know my mistakes.
Yeah, like everyone makes mistakes, but it's like, it's not the mistakes that make you. It's like how you bounce back from those mistakes.
Yes. And I mean, and the honesty to admit when it was a mistake. A customer demo, no customer is going to be upset if you took a wrong turn in the software. say, oops, clicked over here. This is a new module. I haven't explored it yet. But if you brush it under it and say like,
or wing it, or try and say yes to everything.
Yeah, then they're gonna be upset. And so, it's like, hey, yep, I'm learning as we go right here, and it's totally fine.
Yeah, even if it's like a machine, like, is this compliant to be on a job site? Yes, it is. And you're lying. Yeah, it's gonna catch up to you pretty quickly.
Yes.
That sort of stuff. So
you can't have too much ego.
Yeah, definitely.
Got to be humble.
So working through employing and building teams up, the boom and bucket side of it. So talk to me about how that was actually sort of started. Like, was it starting with a team? Was it fundraising? Like you mentioned, you did a lot of interviews with people. Like, let me talk about the early days of boom and bucket.
Yeah. So in 2021, if you were selling something on Craigslist in the Bay Area, a piece of heavy equipment, I probably tried calling you. And I definitely shot you an email. And some of those folks eventually gave us machines to sell. And because they were tired of people like me calling them and bothering them about it. And then we went through the process. And, for this first machine, and I vividly remember it was a John Deere 410K. So a mid-sized backhoe. And we had 55 leads for it. 3 people tried scamming us. They wanted to give us cashier's checks and pick up the machine tomorrow. We had a bunch of lowball offers. The machine, I think, was listed at $55K, and I remember one guy called me and said, well, you take $25K for it. And I said, like, no, that's wild. That's a 50% less. And he said, well, hopes and prayers, I got to try. And we went through this process and just realized that, man, like, this is painful. And imagine if you're trying to field this while, you're on the job site, your cell phone's ringing with these people, offering you 50% less for a machine, and you're trying to do your own business. And so we started really thinking about what does it mean to make the supply side, so the seller of a machine, happy. And people like Ritchie Brothers because they drop off their machine and they're done. But what they don't like is that traditionally it's a wholesale auction market, and so you get low price realization. Dealers go there to buy inventory for their lots and mark it up. And so seller, you're leaving maybe 20% on the table. And we said there's got to be a better way. And so we didn't raise money. We didn't hire a team. The 3 of us instead built a very simple web experience to showcase the quality of the machines that we were listing. And that's deep expertise around critical wear parts, so great photos, great videos. We do a mechanical inspection for these machines where, it's not just the function, did it turn on, turn off, but, was there blow by on the engine, for example? Do the hydraulics look good? Do they operate well? And again, if you look at the common things online, I've been to Machinery Trader so many times where their customers, and so nothing against Machinery Trader, I think it's a great website, but their customers say, well-maintained machine, ready to work. And then you go on site to inspect one of those machines, and it's never been maintained properly, and it's not ready to work. And so we just wanted to figure out how to avoid that. And what we found is that by doing a little bit more work up front and accurately assessing these machines, we can get to the place where people have trust in what they're buying. And so we started doing this all manually. And the technology was, kind of off-the-shelf components. And then we started kind of figuring out what to automate and build more software for. In February of 2022, so this year, we moved from kind of those off-the-shelf components to something that we'd built. And in between those 2 times, we'd raised a little bit of money and we built a team. Now, if you look at the boomandbucket.com website, you'll see all that marketplace technology is ours. Somebody in the field usually uses our field inspection app to inspect a machine, goes through a checklist process. That checklist flows to our website, and then you can see we summarize as what's great about this machine and what needs work. And that what needs work part is the part that people care about, because is this going to be a $5K fix, $500 fix, or a $50 fix? And nobody cares if they know that one of those big expensive fixes is going to come up because they can price appropriately when they buy it. But what they deeply care about is if that is a surprise. And so kind of the motto should be no surprises on that regard. And that's what it's been. We've had a bunch of happy customers on that side.
And so what's the typical, let's say that I own a machine, I've got a rental business, I want to offload it and maybe get a new machine in, and I want to try and get the best price out there. There's a couple things wrong with it, but nothing, like it still operates perfectly. Yep. Am I contacting a rep at Boom and Bucket? Am I going through a website? Like, what's that experience for me?
It depends on the size of your company. let's say that you have 2 or 3 branches and you're regional. We probably have an account manager that you'd work with, and then if you're selling a kind of 1 or 2 machines at a time, we have a flow built for that. If you are kind of greater scale and you have a ERP system and you have a fleet management system for the maintenance records and things like that, there's a different flow, and we'd integrate with that technology on your side. That one, you'd usually work with somebody senior on a kind of nationwide level. Either way, what's going to happen is that the data is going to flow from your systems to ours. We're going to get all the maintenance history that we can, all the telematic data that we can, oil analysis if you have it. We're going to put that into our system, and then out's going to come a beautiful listing where somebody can accurately understand the machine quality and condition. And the net result from you is that we're going to do all the work. The machine's going to stay on your yard. You don't even have to transport it. And then we're going to get you something closer to retail price, as opposed to sending it to your local auction and getting the wholesale auction price. And so net, your life is a little bit easier because you don't have to sell it, and you're getting more money back in your pocket.
And then I'll flip the seat. So now I'm looking for that machine to buy. I need to add that new the used machine to my fleet. How do I buy that machine? Like, what's the process?
Yep. Our rule is pretty simple on this. We don't want to make you do things you're uncomfortable with. And what I mean by that is, we've seen a bunch of websites that, like, there's one that I'm imagining in my head right now. I won't name them. They customize like a Shopify website, and you can click here to buy a machine, but there's 2 pictures, and they just have the specifications of the machine and the hours. There's no way you're going to click there to buy it. And so what we have, you can talk to a sales rep. Like, we have machine experts inside that you can call. They'll walk you through the sales process. On the website, you can find pictures, inspection reports, oil analysis if it exists for the machine, what's great, what's not, all the specifications, prior use, lean check, star rating for the machine, and an operating video. So you can get everything you need to make a decision. But we found that before you wire us $100,000 for a machine, you usually want to talk to a person. So we're happy to talk. We'll prepare the bill of sale for you, the wire instructions, we'll close it. We have a handful of shipping companies that will bid to give you the best price for shipping. We will arrange the logistics. The machine will show up at your place of business. And so, that process, oftentimes, if you think about, going to an auction yard, you go to the auction yard, you have your own financing, so you're pre-approved, you've gone to your local bank or credit union or something like that. And then you have 48 hours to pick up the machine after the auction, and oftentimes you got to go and scramble and get a shipper. We'll do all for you. If you need financing, we'll hold your hand. We've got partners that fit different credit boxes. And the whole goal of this is that because we're helping on each part of the process, everything's smoother. The shipping company and the seller know what's happening. You know what's happening with the shipper. The financing company's in the loop with both sides. And so this whole process that can be, a bunch of moving pieces ends up that you just talk to your account rep. The machine ends up at your place of business.
Yeah, it seems almost like you're just providing that ease of service, giving them that, being that trusted advisor on the, giving you a report to say, yes, we know that this machine is great in these areas and not great in potentially in these areas.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to learn more, can they go visit the machine? Like, what's the typical process? Because you said 93% of people have bought without actually seeing the machine.
Yeah, and some people want to see it, and that's totally fine with us. What we ask, though, is that we don't like tire kickers. I'm sure you don't like tire kickers when you're selling something, and so a small deposit is usually necessary, totally refundable. But great, if you like the machine, you already know our wire instructions, close it, pick it up the next day.
Yeah.
And so we're happy to arrange for that. What people have found is that usually we have all the information they're looking for anyways. They just haven't looked through all the photos, for example, or haven't downloaded the inspection report. And so we can usually walk them through those things, and they can usually be comfortable with it online.
And then transporting the machine.
Yep.
Is that part of the sale?
It is. And so we don't make any money off of that, quite frankly. We do it as a service for our customers. And so shipping particularly larger machines, everybody that does it knows that it can be a pain, and there's some expertise required. And so if you're not in the business of always shipping these things, we can be your expert on that side. So we'll get the dimensions, we'll get the permits, we'll work with the shippers, we'll give you status updates along the way. You pay the shipper on that side, but we'll coordinate everything for you to make you happy.
Yeah, it seems like you're really trying to like break down all the barriers for trying to get equipment.
Yep.
And so in terms of scale, you mentioned the smaller end. Are you working with any of the larger national companies?
Mm-hmm. So, there's thousands of rental companies in the U.S. I have the ARA handbook on my desk. It's this thick on that side of potential rental companies and branches. We worked with Sunstate, and we're working with Sunstate as a preeminent customer, and then 2 of the other top 10 companies are currently in specking pilots with us. And the goal is to provide the same level of service there. It's that remarketing is a challenge. It's a sprint at the end of the year. Having a technology first partner is meaningful for these businesses because it lessens the load on their teams and their remarketing teams and their sales teams at the end of the year. And then the important upside is that they get a fair price for the machines. And I say fair price, there's the bottom of the barrel price, which means that it wasn't marketed well, and there's the unicorn retail price that says, hey, this guy has a wallet that's too full and needs something tomorrow. Their fair price is somewhere in between those two things, and that's what we want to clear every single time. That if we've done a good job pricing equipment, both sides are happy, and so we provide that as a service for these large folks.
And I can just imagine, the larger you get and the more enterprise deals you work with, and you've integrated with these ERP systems, it streamlines the processes even more.
That's it. I think of this more as a technology challenge over time than a pure people and process challenge, but I'm not afraid to do the people and the process stuff. And just to compare this and contrast this with some of the other kind of technology standards in this space is that CAT has VisionLink, for example, and they want you to put all your non-CAT gear on there. And then you know what happens? Your CAT rep calls you and tells you that they could sell you an excavator to replace your Komatsu. That's not the way that we think about this. We think about it as that we're integrating with your systems to leverage and empower you, not for us to upsell and cross-sell and be annoying salespeople there. And so these technology integrations end up empowering the businesses as opposed to being, something that's an annoyance.
And then scale-wise, we're talking all of North America, just the US. Where are you sort of based at the moment?
Yeah, so we started in California, in particular California Dynamics in the sense of CARB. So California Air Resources Board limits certain types of emissions. And so some machines have to be sold outside of California. So there's a natural flow of those machines out of California. So there's a little bit of supply there. We've shipped machines from the Los Angeles region as far west. You thought LA was west, to Hawaii, and then all the way to New Jersey. And so kind of nationwide in terms of where the buyers are. And then on the supply side, we work with some large national accounts. And so there's equipment spread all over the West and the South United States. And then we have reps in the Inland Empire, which is east of LA, Los Angeles County, and then Nevada right now.
Yeah, no, I can see it really developing into something bigger. And then obviously, eventually, there could be some more stuff overseas, yeah?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a national business, international business eventually. The scope and scale of some of these things are just incredible. And the life of a machine, if you're thinking about a big bulldozer, it's incredible. We just don't know what happens when it gets on a ship.
Yeah, because I guess people often sell things overseas and they sell it for even a lower price.
Yeah.
So I think the opportunity that Boom and Bucket has in that space is to try and increase the sale value for things that are overseas as well.
Yeah. There's a discovery challenge for a lot of that stuff as well. There's the international brokering business. There's not a lot of transparency to it. And so I think there's things that we can do to help people find and discover the equipment that they need.
Definitely. All right, well, let's learn a little bit more about Adam as well. So we're talking about Boom and Bucket quite a lot. So maybe you've had a lot of experience in startups and businesses and acquisitions and whatnot. So who are some people that have been a big influential piece within you as maybe a mentor throughout your career?
I've just been really lucky that I've worked with exceptional people. And I think people, when they think of mentors, they think of people that are older and wiser. And I don't think that's always the case. I've worked with people that are younger, my age, that are just exceptional. And they're exceptional in the thing that they're great at. And I've tried to just pick up a little bit of what they do along the way each time there. And so in the construction space, for example, really lucky to have met Darren Bechtel pretty early in my journey in this space, for example. Darren, for those that don't know, is part of the Bechtel family. The Bechtels are famous for being one of the largest private construction companies in the world. They built Hoover Dam. It was one of their largest projects. They built the majority of the pipelines in the Middle East. I got pretty lucky in terms of when I started working in this industry. I met a guy named Darren Bechtel. Darren runs a venture fund called Brick and Mortar, but if you recognize the last name, you've recognized it from the men who built America, basically. They built Hoover Dam, built many of the largest infrastructure projects. They built most of the oil pipelines in the Middle East and many of the refineries. And so he's got just multiple generations of knowledge about how the space operates and how it works. And so, he's been a wealth of information on that side. In terms of company building, I've been exposed to a bunch of great board members and a bunch of great entrepreneurs along the way. If I name one, the others, will be jealous on that side. But I'm forever thankful for those folks that, sat me down when I asked, naive questions. They sat down and said, "Here's why we're doing this." And I'm grateful for those folks that spent time and listened to me and gave me the respect when I was younger to kind of answer those things. The other thing that I just mentioned, the joy of working with excellent co-workers and peers there, is that I learn something from our team every single day. We have folks that have led marketing for huge companies, and we have founders on our team. So like outside of our founding team, we've hired people that have started and sold companies before. And there's just always something that somebody's bringing to the table. Like our head of engineering, like he loves to explain things, and I love to learn. And like it's a good mix in that regard. So if you're intellectually curious and you find good communicators, you're just always learning and getting those lessons from somebody.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what do you think has been the biggest challenge you've faced over your career so far?
I mean, the most painful times is when we made errors in judgment that affected people. And I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but when I think about the things that I always wish I would have done better, it's always when it had affected somebody else. And I've had to lay people off, I've had to fire people, I've made the wrong hires, and 99% of that is because I did something wrong, not because they did something wrong. I was too ambitious with what I thought we could do from growth. And then we had to let people go. And, we haven't done that at Boom and Bucket, but I've done that in previous jobs, and it's incredibly painful. I anchored myself on one thing that somebody was great at, and I didn't take into the full picture of their skill set, and that they didn't have the skill set to do the job. You could easily say, hey, this person's not good enough. That's not it. It's that I didn't evaluate them well for the thing that they needed to do, and I didn't put them in a position to win. And so the hardest things have always been the things that affect people there. And I think that's, it's the part that kind of gnaws at you. It's the part that, you make this judgment, and then 6 months later, you got to realize that you were really wrong. And the responsible thing is to face those things and to admit that, and to have an honest conversation with that person and say, hey, I've made a mistake. This thing that we hired you to do is you're not capable of it. There's two outcomes here. Either we resize the role or we help you find the next best role. And so those have always been the most challenging things on my side. The other things are, I think of them, some people might think of them as challenging, but I think of them as fun. It's the hard work stuff. And, it's the late nights, it's the early mornings, it's the red eyes to New York to go meet with an important customer, an important investor. I think that those will be the things that I end up talking about 20 or 30 years from now. Is those were probably the fun things, even though they were challenging. But the people ones will be the ones that I aspire to learn from every single time, and that I've always kind of carried with a deep sense of responsibility on that side.
And then, if you could give advice to young Adam, what would you say to him?
It's an interesting thing. I think for the first half of my career, I was less assertive than I should have been. And particularly when it came to strategic decisions, that I had strong internal conviction about strategy. And when I mean about strategy, I mean it's company direction type stuff. But I didn't always have the self-confidence to really fight for those strategic decisions. And in a few cases, I wish I would have, because they would have changed the trajectory of a business or a company or a team in those cases. Since then, I've kind of never backed down from a strategic conversation. But strategy is hard because compared to tactics, you and I do this thing today, we see the results tomorrow. We make 100 outbound calls, we know that 10 people are going to be interested. But strategy, shit, that takes time. And that's like the hard thing, is that in order to feel like you're good at strategy, you've got to get cycles, and cycles are just years. And so I would encourage young Adam to lean into that. Like your intuition was right and kind of your gut was right. And so just to trust the gut on that side.
And then so when you are pushing for something
Yeah.
and someone was saying, no, I don't agree, or that's not the right decision, and you're pushing back, like how have you counteracted that? Have you been planning more in your communication, or how have you sort of managed that?
Yeah, so there's two things. One, a lot of strategy decisions are done as a small group. And you can game the conversation, but I don't think that's right. I think you should be closest to the data and closest to the things that you are seeing and figure out how to communicate those. And so, like, from a sales strategy standpoint, for example, like I used to have a head of RevOps report to me, so the person in charge of the revenue operations, which is seeing everything. And so we'd spend a lot of time thinking about sales strategy. And when we wanted to change something, the way that we effectively did it with the executive team was we brought data to it. And so we said, here's what we're seeing in these segments, this is working. Here's what we're seeing in these segments, this is really working. We want to go from here to here. And so you're welcome to investigate. These are the spreadsheets, these are the tools, this is the presentation we put together. I'd love for you guys to digest this, come to your own conclusions, and then let's talk about it. And by bringing people with us through that story, we had much better conversations than when I was young and bullheaded and said, we need to fix this, we need to change it, here's what we need to do. And so there's a bit of a patience in bringing people along with those challenging strategic decisions, where if you bring them to the same journey that you've already had internally, they'll get there eventually, provided that you have shared context, smart people, that type of thing. And then the other thing that I learned from that is you're going to make a change. It's going to affect a lot of people. And you got to figure out how to communicate that to the team. And nobody likes it when things are sugar-coated. They like it when you explain and bring people through the exact same thing that I saw. And so the same thing that I would do as a small team, we'd figure out how to package and bring to a larger team. And so we'd expose a larger team to exactly our decision-making process and say, here's what we saw, here's where we're going as a company, here's why this new thing gets us to this thing better and faster and more effectively. And 99% of the time, people would get it, even if they were impacted, because we shared the way that we were thinking about it. Just nobody likes being told what to do. And so if you can bring them with you and the decision is partially theirs, or at least they understand it, they'll be a lot happier.
It's almost like giving advice to people. Like if you give advice to people, like they're going to always have their guard up. Right? But if you share experiences, it's a completely different sort of dynamic, because you're letting the person come to their conclusion on their own.
Totally. It's the asking questions thing, right? The best therapist doesn't tell you what to do. They ask you questions and you realize it. And that's what you want to be in terms of that type of leadership.
And then so over all those years, how do you now define success?
I mean, it's a good question, because like our ambitions are big. Like I want to build an epic company here. Like there's a reason why I'm spending my time here, and it's not for shits and giggles. But success for us at different stages, it's different things. And so we were incredibly happy when we sold our first 100 machines. That's super cool. And we did that in a very short period of time. I'll be happy when we sell 1,000, then 10,000, and then 100,000, and then we'll be doing 100,000 in a year, and then that'll be amazing. But the milestones along the way are to be celebrated. But how do we define success? Is that along the way, I want happy customers. Like if we've done well for our sellers and our buyers are happy, things will naturally work. These businesses have decent economics as long as you do well by the customer. It's that when you don't do well by the customer is that when things start to suffer. And so in our case, the thing that I care about, CSAT score is pretty simple. Customer satisfaction, we're 9.2 out of 10 on our first few hundred transactions. That's happy customers. Happy customers bring more customers. They tell people. They agree to do videos with us. Like that's what we care about.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing as well. I had someone on the podcast recently from a hire company, a rental business, that was talking about satisfaction surveys after every rental. I feel like more people should be doing these. Like how can you make decisions if you don't have the data? And it's a simple It's a simple mechanic that you can implement through text message or email or whatever it is.
Yep.
And then if they don't respond, then okay, we'll try and find out why they're not responding. Is it going to spam?
Yep.
Is the question too complicated or too long?
Yep.
But those little things can shape your direction of your company. It's a very simple thing to implement.
Totally. But quick feedback loops. Were you happy with your last experience? 1 through 10. 10, great. What was great? 5, what could we do better? That's it. That's easy. Now you've got the tools as a manager to lead.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I love that.
Right.
All right, Adam. Well, thank you for hosting me in your house.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for coming to Texas.
And thank you for coming on the Rental Journal podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for supporting us and excited to see you build the audience here. I appreciate it.